following show contains adult content. It's not our intent to offend anyone, but we want to inform you that if you are a child under the age of 18 or get offended easily, this next show may not be for you. The content, opinions, and subject matter of these shows are solely the choice of your show hosts and their guests, and not those of the Entertainment Network or any affiliated stations. Any comments or inquiries should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening.
Hey everyone, and welcome to 50 Shades of Bullshit. I'm your host, Christine Lalonde, and this is the podcast where we uncover the truth about online dating. Now let's begin. Hey everyone, I'm Christine, and this is 50 Shades of Bullshit. Welcome back, everybody. We're really excited to have Steve Oskard back with us again this week. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Christine.
How's it going?
It's going great. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you.
What did we determine? How many times have I been here?
Today is Steve's 7th time
Oh,
being
gosh.
with us.
How exciting.
I'm going to have to look, but you might be the longest running one. Like, you might be the one that's come back the most.
Because you know how loyal I am. You just call me up at the last minute. I'm like, yeah, go, let's do it. Let's come up with something great to talk about.
I know it is funny because it's once in a while I get somebody who cancels at the last minute. And I'm always thinking now, who have I not had in a while, or who would be fun to have a conversation with? And you do pop up in my head. So I'm really thrilled to have you. So thank you very much for swooping in and saving the day today.
Absolutely. Wouldn't it be awful if this was like a bad first date and we just had nothing to talk about and we didn't know what to say?
Exactly, right? And I've had a few of those.
Oh, no.
Well, you know what it's like when, like, I can have a conversation with anybody. I really can. I can, if someone was to challenge me to go, they pick somebody and say, no, your challenge is to go talk to them. I could do it. Like, I used to be an event coordinator for a yacht company.
Oh,
and
cool.
we used to have to go to these mixers. And there were like 5 of us women who worked there in different departments of the yacht company, but all in sales for parties, like different things, corporate, wedding, whatever. And our boss would always say, okay, so the person that comes back with the most cards wins something.
Yeah.
I won every time. Every time. And they hated me for it, these other chicks.
You're just a card magnet.
Yeah, and I just would like,
Hope the prizes were great.
Right? They were fairly decent. So I just have a hard time not winning.
Well, I think the magic is all in the listening. You know,
yes.
And we talked about that as a potential topic for today, but like how really listening is and curiosity is all the magic of
absolutely
connecting with people.
Well, for those of you who do not know Steve, he's actually, as we just said, been here 7 times now. And today we're actually going to talk about authoring your own growth. And let me tell you a little about Steve. He works with Sexological Bodywork. Did I say that right?
Not exactly, but close. Sexological Bodywork.
Sexological. There we go.
It's a mouthful.
It is in somatic sex education. Ba-dum-bump. For over 30 years, Steve has been guiding clients to explore how they hold their life story in their bodies. Now, see, that to me is fascinating.
Yeah.
I think we all really do hold a lot of trauma in our bodies. So
Yeah.
Steve specializes in working with clients to discover how we hold shame and trauma in our bodies. He works with and teaches clients to explore touch, movement, dialogue, breath, sound, and awareness as a way to find freedom in their sexual expression and the whole of their lives. I do love breath work. I do think that embodying your body and figuring out, what is going on is the most important thing, because our head and our body, it all works together.
Yeah, I really think that psychotherapy is really moving in the direction of integrating somatic and embodied experiences. So, I mean, the simple question of, dialoguing with a therapist and then having them ask, what do you notice in your body when you talk about that? Regardless of what you're talking about, as you're recalling some experience or some feeling or some emotion that's there, actually noticing the body. And that's one of the most useful tools that I share with people.
I think that's fascinating. We've talked a lot about my growth with the show, with my life because of the show many times. I think thought I was doing so well, Steve. And then, that.
Yeah.
And really hard because, I share my growth on here all the time. And the reason why I talk about this and the reason why we do these shows is because I want people to understand that there are just regular old folks out there like myself who experience these things, who go through these things, that we're not alone, that there is work to do, but it's feasible, it's doable. I do find that I am experiencing that I'm feeling a lot of when I talk to somebody and there is some kind of miscommunication or they're upset about something with me or whatever, I tend to get very sensitive and I take things extremely personal, and then I get defensive, and then I deflect with, well, fine, I shouldn't be here anyway. I suck. I this. So I do find that I'm struggling with that. That's my biggest struggle right now. And I'm aware of it. And hopefully being aware of it is my first step.
Yes. Awareness is one of the primary piece to beginning the healing process, is beginning to become aware of something.
Yeah. And it's not an easy thing to admit that you make mistakes. And I've never been one to have a hard time apologizing. I've always been able to do that. When my kids were growing up, I used to say to them all the time, all right, so here's the thing. You're in trouble and you need to go to your room and think about why and how this whole thing went down, what your part was in it. And then I'm going to need you to apologize for your behavior. But when you do apologize, I want to know whether you understand what that behavior was and why you need to apologize. And then I would give them time. And then I would go back and then I would sit down with them and I would say things like, okay, so mom probably could have handled that better. I know that I probably shouldn't have lost my mind and yelled at you, which is hard not to do, especially when you were raised that way, when people, all they did was scream at you. So that was hard to admit that I lost my shit sometimes. And I would say to them, so I need to apologize to you for this, and this on my part. And then as they saw that I did it, then they would start to understand how to do it themselves. And hopefully they learned that. I don't know if they did, but it taught me a lot.
You should ask them. Hey, when I did this, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I should. I'm going to ask them that.
Because that's really challenging to reflect on yourself, especially as a child, when you don't exactly understand what you did that was bad, or so to actually look and see, why did I do that? Reflecting on oneself is a stage of maturity when you could actually, like, here's me living my life in relationship with other people, and then I could actually observe myself. I could be this being up over here and observe myself and see the things that I do and actually connect the dots, like, oh, I know I did that. I was afraid. I know I did that. I was ashamed, and just like, and be the observer of the self.
Really that's a good step. I don't think I learned that part, like shame and doubt and fear, those kind of things, until very recently. I think I'm starting to realize that I still hold a lot of self-doubt and struggles, with trusting. I say I trust, but it's kind of hard when, your life has been full of trauma. And it's kind of like, a dog, going for the food you give them. And then every time you go to give it to them, you kick them in the head when they go for it. And then next thing you know, they're going to starve to death because they're so afraid that you're going to kick them in the head again.
Yeah.
And it's like that with relationships with me. It's really hard to focus on staying positive in the moment with the person you're with, not assuming they're going to do the same shit to you that has been happening to you so much in the past. And I think I've done fairly well doing that. I do know that I still make mistakes, and I still need, am learning, and it's an ever growing thing. And that's why we're here today.
Yeah. It's interesting. You reminded me of a conversation I had just the other day. I'm working with a couple where one of the partners, the previous relationship ended really badly. And they started to get really more and more intimate with this current relationship, and they're pulling back. They're pulling away.
Today's macabre mystery. We were wondering,
And
have you ever heard of Wondery Plus?
Sorry, I don't know why my phone started talking.
It sounds fascinating.
Wondery app. It's trips.
Oh my God, what is going on? I don't know. I touched my phone and all of a sudden it started talking to me.
Well,
sorry.
I hope it was way more interesting than what I was going to say.
No. So you were saying with this couple?
Yes, I'm working with a couple. Somebody just piped in with a comment.
Ignore.
I thought our guest we had someone piping in to remind us. No. So I was working with this couple, and one of the partners, their previous relationship ended really badly, and they're starting to get more intimate in this relationship. And as they're getting more vulnerable, they're getting afraid and pulling back. And it's almost like somehow in our body, in our memories, in our thoughts, even though logically we might know that I have nothing to fear here, or this is going great, there's some kind of foregone conclusion like where this might end up. So, somehow we need to disconnect from the way we feel like it's going and really be present, and then learn to enjoy and love the person that we're with.
Yeah, that's great. It's not, it's a challenge, I think, for most people. We don't really learn as we're growing up from our parents, you don't really. Anastasia, no, of course I don't kick puppies. It was just an example of a shitty person.
We have a bunch of comedians in the chat room.
Yeah,
here.
we do. They like being funny. I love it. So, Steve, tell me what defines growth for you when you work with a client? What do you think defines that?
I think the first piece of it is one's desire. Where do they want to go? What do they want? And for some people, when they come to counseling or therapy, or they go to their chiropractor, or whatever it is, all they can think of is, I want to be out of pain. So that could be an interim step, but I always encourage people to look at what is it that they really desire? What is it that's possible that maybe never has been before, but they want for themselves and their lives, something beyond just getting their head above water, or something beyond just getting out of pain, so that they can genuinely be working towards something that's fun and inspiring and enjoyable for their life. So growth would be finding the areas or the edges where it's just a little uncomfortable, but I know there's some learning here and some discovery here.
I agree. When you work with people who are looking to make changes in their life and make those shifts, I think that a lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, could it be that we sometimes have to shift from passive to intentional? Do you think that is like
Absolutely.
Makes sense?
For years, I went to my therapist hoping they'd fix me. I remember in my
Yes.
20s and 30s, give me the solution to this problem so I can quit suffering about this thing that I keep talking about over and over again. I'm sick of it. And finally I realized I have to be the one that comes forth and generates the direction that we're going to go in. I remember recently I had a client come to our session and he said, okay, I want to talk about this today. And I was like, oh, great. It was the first time he initiated something very specific that he wanted to talk about. Now it happened to be sex, which I love talking about sex, but
Right.
but I was like, hey, finally, that's what brought him to me years ago, is actually talking about his sex life. And
Right.
finally he really got to the place where he could say, I want to work on this today. And that was a turning point for our sessions. Since then, he's been a lot less passive in how he's related to what he wants for his life. And then you go back out into life and in between sessions, which is where the real work begins, where you get to experiment and explore with people.
True. It's taking those things that you are, the tools and the tricks and all the things that are guiding you to move forward from, like you said, from being passive and making decisions on your growth and actually implementing them. I think that's where a lot of people have a big disconnect, is knowing how to go from making the decision that you're going to make changes, but then actually taking those actual
Absolutely.
steps.
Yeah.
Like practicing.
Yeah.
Like practicing shooting basketball hoops.
It really is. Life is not like, a formula. I don't have the answer. When people come to me for the answer, I'm like, this is your life.
You're just a guide.
Yes. And if at the end of the session, I sometimes say, go out and break something. It's like, go out and make some mistakes. Life is messy. But if my sessions with people give people the freedom to just kind of stumble a little bit and be a little clumsy in life, hallelujah. I think the idea of having ourselves all buttoned up and figured out, at the end of a session to kind of think, okay, now I know how to face life. No, we have no idea. Now I know how to be clumsy. Now I know how to be in the unknown. Now that's what I want from my sessions. And my conversations with people. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today is what is something that people can do that can be really useful. And it's something that I started doing maybe 2 years now. And you don't need a therapist. You just need a friend who you like, you trust. And I met somebody who I knew had a similar background to me. We didn't know each other really well, but I called him and I asked him if he wanted to do this. It's based on, you can look this up. What we do is loosely based on what's called co-counseling. Now there's a structure to it. And there's some books about it, but we just loosely took from that model. And basically we talk the same time once a week, and it's essentially listening turns. And your one person talks. We chose 20 minutes, but you could do it for 15, or you could do it for 30, or you could do it longer or shorter. We chose 20 minutes. I'll talk and he just listens. And then we switch. But then we added something at some point. Once the first person finishes talking, usually the second person will say, and I just added this at one point, is there something you'd like to be acknowledged for? Just anything. And it just is simple. The person is not listening to see how they can provide input. See, even when you do go to a therapy session, the therapist or the psychiatrist or whoever you're working with is listening for how they might guide you or how they could give you input based on their wealth of experience. And some of them have great advice, great experience. Of course, that's why you're going to them. But there's this different quality when someone is just listening to listen and add nothing. And it actually shifted for me the experience of actually working with my therapist. I had a lot more clarity into the sessions that I went to with my therapist after doing these sessions with this friend.
I love that.
Yeah, it was really powerful.
It's a great idea.
Because I knew I was not going to get feedback. It was not an echo chamber for my own judgments even. or I wasn't going to get coaching or some ideas. Now, what was interesting is what emerged after a while, because he's a smart guy and he's trained as a coach, is there were some times I thought, I do want some direction with this. So we actually set up a second call. So now we actually talk twice a week. And in the second call, we actually do some coaching with each other. But part of that includes learning to ask for what kind of coaching you want to have. Sometimes advice. You want advice? Like, listen, I don't know what to do here. I'm like blindfolded with my hands tied behind my. Tell me what to do. Which is what you could ask a friend. You can't quite ask a therapist that. But sometimes you want coaching, which tends to be more questions to kind of mine for the gold within you. So working with someone who has some skills is great, and actually could also be more challenging for them if you're just going to do listening turns. And I encourage people to do it, because it is like using a friendship in a very specific way. And then, there are times you might go out and hang out and do other things and socialize, but having a specific time where you have this quality of a relationship, I think it's really powerful to find someone like that. And
I love that.
Great friendship with them. Yeah.
Misty is asking, is no feedback a good thing?
Yeah, in this particular model, I say absolutely, because I know that a lot of times and this isn't true for everybody, but I'm like anticipating getting some judgment sometimes. Like sometimes I want to be able to say out loud something that I have shame around, and getting no feedback and just getting someone to listen. And I think sometimes it also, this is not necessarily rigid. Sometimes, one of us will respond like, oh, I hear you, or something like with just a response that's compassionate when one of us has said something like, oh, wow, I get how tough that was for you. Yeah. So it's not to be stoic and rigid or frozen, but to be an empty vessel of one who can listen. And Misty, it takes some practice, but I'm telling you, if you have a friend, try it. Just 20 minutes of just. I'll tell you one more thing that I learned is that it doesn't have to have any continuity to it. I could talk about, something that happened yesterday and then something I'm going to do tomorrow. And then I could be all over the place, and it's okay, because it's my time. It really is. So I think, yes, the no feedback is a good thing, but Misty, you could also experiment with other things. Like I told you, we added this second day where we do get feedback, and we actually ask for coaching. So thanks for your question, Misty.
Janice and I do something very similar to this. Yeah. When we talk, we do, if it's one of those times that I know that she's struggling with something, I don't talk about me at all. She says her things, and then I give her encouragement, and then I say, I have asked her, do you want a solution or support?
Yeah.
Do you want feedback, or do you just help, or do you want me to just encourage you to keep going? And she'll tell me, and I think we're getting even better at it. I mean, I met Janice in November 3.5 years ago when I started the podcast. She was in that group, and her and I've come a long way. I mean, today she even said, hey, I'm feeling like we didn't even speak. And she sent me a message saying, hey, are you okay? Something feels off, and you popped into my head. We're and I said, yeah, I'm struggling today. I'm on the struggle bus. And she said, I can't talk on the phone, but if you want to, send it all to me. So I typed it all out. I sent it to her, and then she just was very loving and said, first of all, you got this. Second of all, this is what I wish for you. And that gives me kind of insight sometimes.
Yeah.
So
what a great
I get
relationship.
it. It's really great. And we've come a long way. And I like that for people. I do think that everybody needs that person that isn't going to just interrupt while you're talking and giving their opinion the whole time. And I have friends like that, which is fine. Yeah. That's who they are. And I love them for that, but that they're not going to be the ones I call for.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's great because you know what you want, and you might want different things sometimes. There
Right.
might be the people with solutions that, gosh, I really do need some solutions now, and those are the times you call them.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and it's interesting because I know I tend to hear people talking about men are this way and women are this way, and it's often said that men are always trying to provide solutions, and what women really want is just to be heard. Well, that is an overgeneralization because I mostly
Yeah.
want to be heard because I love figuring out things on my own, and I know
Mhm.
I've learned the most from my mistakes. And
Mhm.
I've fallen down and made an ass out of myself and just laughed at myself and had the best time from my mistakes. And what I want more from my friends is just to be my cheering section, not
Yes.
my advisors. And then there are times like I'm like, okay, I'm not quite sure. And this friend I know is really good with this.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
probably a growth edge for me, is learning how to ask the friends who I know are good at things to support me with specific things.
I love that. Now, do you tell people when they are trying to do that shift that we had talked about from, say, passive to intentional? Do you ever give them like an exercise to kind of start learning how to implement those in other areas of their life?
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. I thought of it several when we first were talking about this. Uh, there's something that I do with people that I actually call installing the observer.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
if you think about how we are when we're quietly going about our day and doing the dishes and having thoughts,
Mhm.
the thoughts are usually from a specific perspective. It's like someone's voice is in there, and if you want to dive deeper into what's called internal family systems, it's a much more sophisticated model at noticing what I call the choir, all the different voices that you have. You got your mother in there,
Yeah.
you got your father and your third grade teacher, but their voices, or in internal family systems they call them parts,
Mhm.
that shape us.
Hmm.
Well, in order to
True.
even recognize it, you have to have what I call the observer, who can actually just be there noticing the different parts of you. So
Hmm.
I have this exercise that I do with people sometimes where I have them imagine, and it's very simple. It's not actually, I've done it several different ways, but you could actually close your eyes and just imagine that there's some observer here that's also you, who's observing you in all the different ways that you be. The ways when you're being funny, the way of being social, the ways that when you're being afraid, the ways that you're being when you're being,
Mhm.
successful, the way that you're being when you're not successful. So could actually see the certain attributes that you're expressing, that there's this part of you. It's kind of like there was a camera watching you, like the Truman Show, if you've ever
Right.
seen the movie, just watching you throughout your life objectively, not getting caught in the emotions of how you are, but just, and then actually could even connect the dots to see why is he afraid in this kind of experience? Oh, it makes sense because look at the pattern. So you could
Mm.
start to see on things unfolding. And you mentioned attachment styles earlier today, and that is another emerging model that people are using to see how you behave in certain circumstances, in certain situations. Did you mention attachment styles, or was that
I
um,
think that
earlier?
when I was talking about it, attachment styles is always kind of like right there in that topic,
Yeah,
you know, because in my past, I've been an anxious attachment
yeah,
through making changes and my growth and healing parts of me that need healing. I think that that is kind of gradually kind of crumbling and going away. I'm not as anxious attachment anymore. I think that once in a while I'll start to feel it and acknowledge it and go, this isn't necessary. This isn't needed in this moment. And
mm,
I acknowledge it and let it go. Um, I think that I'm getting a much healthier attachment now because I also have felt that I was going the extreme and not wanting to attach at all.
yeah,
Just because I've been over all of it for so long.
Yeah.
But it's not healthy for my growth either.
Yeah.
So I know that I've got to kind of find that happy medium in there that is more healthy for myself and my partner, whoever my partner may be,
Hmm.
you know? Do you ever suggest to people that they try to journal at all, or, maybe write down skills, habits, mindsets that they want to refine, or anything like that, or anything that may be like challenging for them?
I always ask. I try to ask people what they like to do or what feels
Okay.
comfortable, because I know people aren't going to do. If I say, okay, go journal, and they're not a journaler, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
I want to give people something to do that they, that they'll have fun with, that will be an exploration for them. And yeah, there are times that I challenge people and say, come on, just do it once, or, like I might, but I really try to find the thing that they're going to experiment with out in their life, because that's where
Right.
growth really happens. In the session itself, yeah, we're going to stir some things up and we're going to talk about some things, but where it really happens is in between sessions. And I think you mentioned about journaling, and you talked about yourself and kind of looking at things. There's reflection and excavation of our past, which it can be very rich and fascinating and fruitful, and we could also get mired in it. So there is reflection and excavation, but there's also creation, which is really looking to what you want, and it's looking to the future. And it's creating the life that you want to have. And most people think they need to drudge up every part of the past before they can actually create their future. Well, that's not true, but, so we sometimes get stuck looking backwards when we really want to go that way. So we're walking backwards into the future. Maybe I should write Walking Backwards into the Future.
I love that. You should write that down, because that makes a good book.
Because we want to look to the future with wonder and awe and fascination and playfulness. And playfulness doesn't necessarily mean silly, but it could be, a lightheartedness with our relationship to life. And I think that's where I like to encourage people to dip their toes in the water and risk in that realm more than risking into going into dark places that they're afraid about.
Okay. No, that's great.
The darkness will come up. The shadow work will come up when you're looking to the future, because some obstacle might come up for you. You could take a deep dive and do some great shadow work, and it's powerful, but you could also get stuck there.
Yeah, I do believe that. I also think that you can't have growth without. What I realized today, over the last couple of days, I've struggled with some things. I've had the worst headache because I think it's a stress situation. I think I'm realizing that growth doesn't come without friction, because otherwise I wouldn't have known I still had the problem, because I thought I was like good. I thought I was great. And then next thing you know, I'm getting super defensive about something. And then I get passive aggressive, and I fucking hate passive aggressive. And I find that I'm being passive aggressive to myself. Like I'm turning it towards myself. Yeah. I'm torturing myself with it. And I really kept thinking, why is this shit happening? Why is it coming up? Why? And then I thought, well, wait a minute. Without this friction, I wouldn't have the growth, and neither would I have the growth with the person I'm having the friction with.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't be beating myself up for trying to heal.
Yeah.
Because I think I beat myself up for it. Like I expect myself to be better and healed sooner and quicker, faster, and go. But,
there's some timeline.
I've had 50 plus years of abuse and trauma.
Yeah.
And it's, yes, I've walked away from all of that. I've done a lot of work over the years. I've worked towards, healing really hard these last couple of years, because I'm ready to be in a solid partnership with somebody that's loving and wonderful. But I also can't have the the delusion that
Mhm.
it's going to be perfect because I'm healed, and I'm not healed. I will never fully be healed. It's a journey. I realize that. And I'm grateful for the friction that I have with the people I've had them with in the last few days, because I guess I couldn't grow without knowing that I had that growth to still do. I didn't realize I was still hanging on to those kind of things.
Yeah.
And so I don't want, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want people to be too hard on themselves. You know, I try to give others grace, but I'm not really giving myself a lot of grace.
Yeah. Be kind to yourself.
Mm. Yeah, I
You're
need
the
to
only,
be nicer to myself.
you're the only you've got.
I am the only me I've got. True
Only
story.
one of you.
That is true.
Yeah.
What about revisiting and revising, say, the narratives of somebody's life? Like, I don't know, about, like, we're talking about being the author of your own, healing, basically here. And our stories aren't fixed. I've learned that the hard way. My story
Yeah.
isn't fixed. My story is always evolving. How can you suggest maybe to people that they can maybe pivot or rewrite or update what they're looking to do in their life?
I think, great question. Thanks. I think that along with installing the observer is being able to recognize the story as a story.
Oh.
Like you said, it's not that they're actually malleable, that it's not, and particularly the conclusions that we came to out of the story. So whatever happened to us happened, or to the best of our memory, or the worst of our memory, whichever. And
Right.
then we concluded something about ourselves and how we needed to be in life to make it and survive. So
Yes.
it's the
So true.
conclusion that you came to that was like a sentence. I mean, we'll take a simple example. You raise your hand and you give the wrong answer in class and you're embarrassed because everybody laughs. And then you decide, well, I'm never going to do that again.
But again,
I'm just shy in front of groups. So then you never grab the mic at karaoke. You never the one who gives the speech, or because you decided something about, you concluded, and it happened in a moment of, I don't want to call it trauma, but it was a moment when it was traumatic, as
right.
On a scale of, something happened, you felt embarrassed, you felt ashamed, and it was too much at that time. So part of you contracted and you concluded something, either consciously or unconsciously, and then decided that, okay, I'm just never going to raise my hand again. I'm never going to be the one to be in front of groups, or whatever, however it played out. But then you realize one day at karaoke, everybody sings and you get up and sing. It's like, God, I have a pretty good voice. And then all of a sudden you realize, this isn't awful. I should do this more. And then you give yourself some more. So it might happen randomly, like at karaoke, or you could say, gosh, I want more of this in my life, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
Being able to be in front of groups, or be able to introduce myself to people, or being able to love myself more, or whatever it is that you want more of in your life. And you could look and see that, oh, that's the story that's not allowing it. And I think part of what we are beginning to recognize as somatic work and embodied work is becoming more popular, is that how we hold something in our bodies, like the glue that keeps the story together. So you could see people hold certain things in their posture, and you could see that, the way people move or don't move, the limitations that they have. It could be attached to some story, and that a different approach to having the story be more malleable can sometimes be doing some kind of movement or breath work or somatic engagement, somatic inquiry.
Yeah, the first time I ever did breath work, I will say, and I say it as often as I can on here, if people don't understand breath work, give it a try.
Yeah.
Because it It is really extraordinary. And I remember the first time doing it, and at the beginning they were talking about what to keep in mind and what to, do is like, go to the bathroom if you have to go, but then come right back and get right back into it or whatever. And I remember him saying, if you're starting to feel this tightness or this overwhelming feeling in your body, get up on your hands and knees and rock back and forth. Just move your body. Just go with it. Allow it to work its way through your body. And that was the most fucking powerful thing I've ever experienced in my life, because I could feel the pain starting in my back, and it was just tightening and tightening. And I've had severe back pain since I was very young. And I realized that my trauma has been held in my back. And a lot of my abuse has been physical, mental, emotional. It's all of it. But I've realized that, maybe I should do this. So I got up on my hands and knees and I started rocking back and forth, and I had the eye mask on, I'm breathing, and it was the most enlightening, amazing thing to feel that just flow right out of my body. And as it flowed out of my body, I laid back down, and I remember thinking in that moment, oh my God, I've never been good enough for anybody. I've never been good enough. And that was which was moving through me. And because the music brings up things throughout breath work. And as I realized that, I'm letting it go. I'm just sobbing and heartbroken and thinking, wait, who fucking cares if I'm not good enough for anybody else? I'm good enough for me.
Yeah.
And I think that was a moment that really just changed everything for me, is that I needed to accept myself and take what you were talking about, like when people feel shame or guilt from something that happens to them or a situation that happens, and they hold on to it for so long. And here I'd held on that I was never good enough for anybody, much less myself. And it was after that I started learning that ever important job of loving yourself first.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a tricky thing. And I hope that people learn these things,
What you just shared is a great illustration of how somatic work works.
Okay.
And nowadays everybody's using the word somatic because it's become a buzzword, and some people really have a way of explaining it beautifully, and some people they did a weekend workshop and now they're a somatic therapist. So it happens, but you described how I see somatic work. It's actually integrating a somatic or body-based experience with speculating about some limiting belief or some experience or story that you're holding in your body. And what you did is you connected the dots. Now, whether or not it's true that the back pain over here that you're experiencing is connected to the belief I'm not enough, doesn't matter. It's that you're making the connection. You're engaged in of opening or untangling an experience of contraction in your body. So part of how I describe what happens when we conclude something about ourselves, if it's a moment in life when we experience something traumatic, our body contracts somehow, physically, experientially, we contract somehow. And if we don't have a way to open or discharge or release that, then there's going to be this area of contraction in our nervous system, in our body. So I often think of trauma work as like pulling on a tangled ball of yarn, and we're pulling on threads. And if it doesn't move, we're not going to pull at it. We're not going to try to pull on one of these strings. That'll be like too aggressively trying to work on something. And the old model of working with trauma was the face your fears model, the exposure therapy model. And although that model worked in some cases, it also re-traumatized people.
Yeah.
But what you described in your experience with breath work is some memory or thought bubbled to the surface that was connected to this action of releasing and moving your body. So something got opened up. It was like pulling a thread that came loose where you could actually be curious. And now I'd say in some cases, that's all that's needed is the I'm not good enough is free. In some cases, that's where the work begins. Now I could begin to be curious about all the times in my life where I decided I wasn't good enough or I held myself back. So it could hopefully in some cases just be free, and float off like a feather, or it could be the beginning of some beautiful discovery that could still have pain and upset and challenges connected to it. But if you could now lean into it because you've had the experience of that opening or connecting of the dots, it could be a great avenue to explore.
That's great. When I guess what people need to realize, I think within myself, I know I do, is that I don't need to have all the answers to begin when you begin to start growing and healing and moving through things, right? Isn't it like just the beginning is just acknowledging?
Yeah. Desire. You need a desire to move in some direction.
Yeah. So it's like growth is one direction and healing is another. You mentioned also shadow work. I think shadow work is a very important step. Some people don't understand what shadow work is. Do you mind describing what that is?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it some. It's like looking at all those connections and all the times in life where something happened, you experience a sense of contraction, shame, fear, and you have that kind of in your history. So it's somehow stored in your body or your nervous system or your memories. It could also be memories that have been suppressed. I was with someone recently who was able to access a lot of times where she felt a tremendous amount of shame in connection to her relationship with men. And how it manifested is in a nonlinear way. She was talking about something that happened at this time and then this time and then this time, because it was almost like someone popped the balloon, and all of a sudden it all came out at the same time. There was no it was not linear. And I was at first I realized I was trying to follow what she was saying, and then I realized, oh, this is just a release. And she was able to access all these times around this theme of shame for her, because she had a history of experiences of people treating her in a particular way where she felt shamed.
Yeah.
So shadow work is about really the courage to explore those places where you have shame and where they might have come from and what might have happened. It takes a lot of courage, and I think a willingness to be curious and go slow. I say go at the speed of curiosity. When you can be curious, great. But if it gets to a point where it's too much, we'll set it aside and work in a different direction.
I did shadow work a handful of years ago. Probably about 2.5 years ago, I did some shadow work with a woman who took me through mentally going through a wall or around a wall and seeing myself as a little girl, because no one's ever protected me. No one has ever, made me feel like I was not being hurt. And I went back and did the work myself by being that person for my young self. And that was really an incredible opportunity. And I find myself going there in my mind, in my childhood, in times and places and spaces where I know that I was needing comfort and support and love and protection. And I go and do that. And I allow myself to, give that to myself. So I think that's important.
Yeah. Shadow work doesn't have to be scary. There's always a component of it of bringing love and nurturance to the parts of you that are bubbling to the surface.
Yes, I
and
agree.
Really, if you're not able to do that yourself, having somebody who can really just support you and be with you in that space.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Steve, I don't know how it happens, but time just freaking flies.
Oh my gosh. Look at that.
I know, it went fast. I'd love to have you back, obviously, again. I don't know when Jade is coming back, so I would love to talk to you about maybe being a co-host with me for a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's something you want to do. And to all of you who come and make comments every week, come and support us every week, we thank you so much. It really means a lot to me knowing that I can touch a life and help somebody in some way. And Steve, you are a big part of that today, so thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So everyone out there, same time, same place next week. And until then, let's just keep this shit real. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends, like and follow us on Instagram at 50 Shades of _bullshit and Facebook at 50 Shades of Bullshit. Thanks so much for listening, and we really hope to see you again next week.